Hi, James Jones from the Mid-Pacific ICT Center in San Francisco at our 2012 Winter ICT Educator Conference. That's a handful. With Casey O'Brien, who directs the Cyberwatch NSF ATE Center in Maryland, and Dan Callahan from the EC Council. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
And so maybe Dan, we'll start with you.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about the EC Council.
So EC Council is a internationally focused certification industry body. Our flagship certification is a certified ethical hacking, or hacker, I should say, otherwise known as the CEH. We have other certifications that get into penetration testing and forensics, but our core is certified ethical hacking.
Great. And I guess this fits within the larger domain of security, or IT security, ICT security, which is kind of your focus as an ATE center. Tell us a little bit about security and why that's important.
Well, primarily because folks are using more and more devices to access more and more critical information. Everything is becoming networked, from cars to refrigerators and home systems, obviously to business critical systems. And so as more and more becomes connected, more and more is reachable from the internet, more and more is susceptible to compromise. And so it's clear that security is critical, and security has different branches. There's a whole privacy component to it, which is critical when we start making information accessible from mobile devices or tablet PCs. Being able to protect certain bits of information becomes critical.
So information and communication technologies are now pervasive. They've become integrated into everything, certainly all organizations, where they're increasingly mission critical. This is the data, this is the know-how, the intellectual property of that enterprise. And if somebody breaks it or steals it, you suffer harm. And that's happening more often today. You hear these famous cases about, lots of credit card numbers being stolen, or somebody's intellectual property is stolen by China or whatever it is that's making the headline of that day. So we need a workforce who can address these challenges, that understand all of these different technologies, because security is a mindset. It's a value proposition. It's something you've got to just think about and plan for and react to at every stage, as a user, as a network manager, as a software designer, as an operator. It's something that exists everywhere. And so then within that, there are, of course, all sorts of opportunities to apply that. Ethical hacker? That sounds like an oxymoron. What do you mean by that?
Well, there are certain skill sets that we teach the students or the professional that walk the fine line of gaining access to information or data, or knowing how to disrupt a product or service. And so with those skill sets comes the responsibility. So we want to make sure that there is the ethical component to say that if you do gain access in a penetration test, and you gain someone's personal information, that you're not going to expose that information out there. So it's really not only just from the skill sets and the ability to the knowledge, but it's really about you as the individual holding that true and saying, there is following the law, basically, and following the standards behind the industry.
So in order to protect individuals and organizations and systems from attack, you have to understand how they would be attacked. So these methods are things that you can study, so that you know how to defend against them.
Right.
But it's not enough to just teach people how to do it. You also have to teach people why you don't do it.
Right. And yeah, I mean, it's just like the best defense is knowing how to play offense.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the philosophy, is that by teaching the offense, you as a defender would know how to, some of the threats, some of the attack methodologies that they're going to use. So you have an idea. Now, you're not going to, because everything's evolving so fast that it's always that the catch-up game. So when you're the defender, you have to also learn the offense, what's coming on, what's the new threat vector, where is it coming from, what are the skills that I'm going to be needed to, or he or she's going to need to defend against that. And then you also have the penetration test, which is the organization, company, school would know that there would be an attempt to break into the systems, and that way you could show the vulnerabilities within the system. So there is a lot. You talk about the workforce, and Casey kind of mentioned this before. Cybersecurity, it definitely means 100 different things to 100 different people, and that's one of the biggest challenges today, is to figure out. It's broad stroking, but at the same time, there are so many different key critical skill sets in different areas. So you mentioned before, you have data. That's one component. At the Hacker Halted event at EC Council host down in Miami, we had a session. Some guys packed into a insulin dispenser machine. They had the insulin dispensing machine in the room, and they hacked into the insulin dispenser, and they were able to control the levels of insulin being dispensed at real time.
Wow.
So you can see it's just not necessarily the data, but it could be hardware. It could be the camera. If that camera is hooked onto a network, you could probably most likely hack into that camera.
Yeah.
So there's all these different dynamics and all these different areas that you have to think about.
Yeah. So in hardening a system to be defended against attack, you can conduct friendly attacks
Sure.
and see if they get through.
Mhm.
So that's another application of the ethical hacking.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
You also can, present the offensive skills and tools and knowledge in a way that the system administrator or the operator or the person having to defend and manage the system can then build into their daily routine. So it's not just I'm using these tools to do penetration of a system, but I'm actually using these tools in my everyday job to actually make my systems more secure. And that I think is a real, it's easy to get bogged down in the ethical hacker. It sounds like an oxymoron. If we can get past that part of it and start getting people to think about using the mindset of a hacker and the tools and the skill set and the knowledge in their everyday work, it kind of then really, that debate kind of goes aside, or not that debate, but that focus on the oxymoron of the term, and it becomes a practical skill with a real knowledge set and an ability that can be applied to lots of different systems on a daily basis.
So to be good at defense, you have to understand offense.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. I mean, if you look at the best defensive players in the NFL, right, they probably actually understand offense better than they understand defense to some degree, right? I mean, you look at Ray Lewis of the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, he understands offense probably better than most people, but he's a linebacker. He plays defense, right? And conversely, the best quarterbacks actually understand defenses really well. And so those kinds of metaphors, although sports metaphors get lost on nerds, they're really applicable in this space.
Yeah. So, community colleges are our focus. Every community college ICT-related program should be teaching security.
Agreed.
And people go about that in different ways. What do you think are good practices or good places to get resources, good approaches for, what people are going to put into their programs related to security?
So for what audience?
Community college faculty.
Conferences are a great place to get resources. And there are plenty of conferences, from the traditional hacker conferences like DEF CON the first weekend in August in Las Vegas to a popular equivalent on the East Coast in DC in February called ShmooCon. Any kind of faculty development opportunity through some of the NSF ATE centers like Cyberwatch and the Center for System Security and Information Assurance in Chicago. Certainly professional training opportunities through the vendors themselves. There's a million resources available on the web. What else?
Well, let's talk about EC Council in particular. Let's say somebody wants to, a community college teacher wants to engage with you. How do they do it? How do they find out more?
Actually, one of the partners that we have is a lot of the local schools or training companies. We have a network of authorized training centers. But with Casey, with Cyberwatch, we point them right back to some of the the teachers themselves and the practitioners. Because a lot of times there is a translation loss from the workforce development side in the training environment, whether it be in a training center or an internal cyber university within a major organization, and how the classes are taught inside the academia. So taking a book from a training course, trying to make that applicable inside the semester-long class doesn't necessarily work. And there's a lot of the ins and outs that the professionals would know better, and that's why we point back to the academics. So yeah, for certain.
Yeah, I guess to be good with this stuff, you can't just read about it. You got to do it. You got to be fingers on the keyboards and hands on the plugs.
And that's actually where industry's moving. And there are some which I'll be speaking to tomorrow, is the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, and really kind of looking at this holistically. Is that there is a certain component which is knowledge based, which you'll learn, you can read about. But the key critical factor is the skills and abilities, and that comes down to your getting your hands on the network or the keyboard and actually doing it. So that's going to be a major focus within the government today, is to try to articulate that workforce, what the workforce needs. You have the DoD has their certain needs. You have some of the other Homeland Security is going to have their own needs. Critical infrastructure is going to have their own needs. People inside the critical infrastructure, whether it be the energy grid, whether it be the financial sector, the healthcare sector, they're all going to have primarily 80% of the same type of skill sets, but it's going to get into verticals in the industry regulations, which may throw a little wrench into some of this, but that's down the road. So the key right now is to focus on getting the competent skill sets and a competent workforce, and that's where the community colleges can really play a major role. Because it's not just about the Fortune 500, it's not just about the government. It's about the small, medium-sized businesses out in the community, and that's where a lot of the people are employed, and that's where a lot of data sits. And not a lot of people are thinking about that. So, in doctors' offices, for instance, how many local doctors' offices now have to put your medical records online? Now, is the doctor going to know how to secure his network in their local doctor's office? Probably not. So, who's servicing that network, and do they have the competent skill sets and know how to lock down that system? So it goes from the local shop all the way up to that Fortune 500 company.
And it's continual. I mean, it's if you're the kind of person that's really driven by challenges, puzzles, you like continual learning, you like something that's technically very rigorous and challenging, it's really hard to go wrong with cybersecurity. Primarily because there's this inverted supply and demand problem in the United States right now, which is a huge demand for qualified cybersecurity professionals that can demonstrate the skills and abilities Dan was talking about, and a lack of supply. And so that's really a perfect opportunity for somebody looking to break into this field, including you asked me about what are resources available to faculty kind of breaking into this, and there's a huge need for qualified faculty to teach this stuff, right? And so great problem to have. Virtually tens of thousands of jobs, excellent paying, across the board, not just, we're East Coast guys, so it's not just the Beltway, we're not just talking with a Beltway perspective here. We're in the Bay Area, so this is applicable to, Silicon Valley and you name it.
It's interesting. It's now like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This is the 5th or 6th time today where it's come up that in spite of this miserable economy and high period of unemployment, there are jobs that are going unfilled because employers can't find workers with appropriate skills. That's messed up. So the world has changed, right? What we need in a workforce is not what people have. So we've got to develop that workforce. And it's a place where we've got to all throw in together. This is a common problem. We want to get out of this bad economy. We got to educate our workforce. We got to put them in place and realize the economic benefits that come from that.
Agreed.
So Casey, if people want to learn more about Cyberwatch and engage with your efforts, how do they do that?
So they can go to our website, which is cyberwatchcenter.org, and there's resources available. Talks about the kinds of initiatives we're involved in. There's forms to fill out to get in contact with me. We're primarily focused in cybersecurity education at the 2-year space, but clearly that means linkages down into K-12 programs and then on up into the 4-year schools. So we have a lot of, in the way of articulation agreements or pathways from high school to community college to 4-year school. We do a lot in cyber exercises, both design and delivery. We're involved in training and increasing the capacity of the next generation of faculty that are going to teach in this space. And we're located in Prince George's Community College in Laurel, Maryland, which is right outside D.C., but we really have a national presence. So we have member institutions, both 2- and 4-year schools in 26 states. And we're always looking for new partnerships that would include industry, academic institutions, and public sector entities.
And I guess we now have a Cyberwatch West in Southern California, which is evolving to be something like Cyberwatch East, I guess. So we look forward to hearing more from them also. So I think there's some, clear common ground here, which is these information and communication technologies are increasingly important. Security of these systems is increasingly important. We need to develop an appropriately skilled workforce, and this needs to happen right away.
Agreed.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.